Okay, we will go ahead and call this meeting to order and get roll call, please, Mr. Checkett.
Commissioner Cholet,
Here.
Commissioner Stringer,
Here.
Commissioner Knack, Commissioner Whitehouse, Commissioner McCaffrey,
Here.
Commissioner Carmen, Chair Sarter.
Here. Any additions or deletions from the agenda tonight?
No changes recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Anyone from the public wish to speak on any non-agenda items? We do not have any. Can I get a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of March and from February? Doing them together tonight.
I move we approve the minutes from the March 3rd and February 3rd meetings.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cholet,
Yes.
Stringer,
Yes.
Commissioner McCaffrey,
Yes.
Chair Sarter.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to new business. It's all yours, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Chairman Starter. Cody Bird, Planning Director. In your agenda packet tonight, I'll cut right to the chase and say we're presenting the final report on our housing needs and affordability assessment. I also wanted to just maybe kind of highlight some of that final report for the Planning Commission here. One of the things I wanted to kind of start with, we've talked about housing in our community since we started this kind of in the comprehensive plan discussion, which was adopted 5 years ago. And the conversations have started even sooner than that. We kind of intuitively knew that there were housing challenges in the community. We suspected that we were going to have to face housing challenges, but we hadn't quantified them. This report, this housing needs and affordability assessment, really helps quantify what those challenges are, confirms that there are challenges. There's quite a few challenges. And it also kind of identified the gaps for where those challenges are, what the thresholds are, and provides us a bit of a path for how we can move forward if we want to start closing some of those gaps that meet our housing needs. We suspected that the challenges were a little bit scary. This report, at least in my opinion, confirms that it is a little bit scary. And the data shows that it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So we think it's important to take immediate action on these housing challenges for Wellington. In accordance with this report, and the implementation table is kind of at the back end of it, but it breaks down some of the different challenges that we're facing into short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions that we can take to start to address these challenges. And as the Planning Commission knows, we began at a staff level with focusing on the short-term challenges or the short-term recommendations rather, that didn't have a significant cost burden with them to get them underway. And we presented draft recommendations for code amendments to the Planning Commission last month, as you're familiar with, and the Planning Commission supported those. We're presenting those tomorrow night to the Board of Trustees for consideration. So we're moving those forward with kind of the regulatory elements of housing to basically remove barriers that are preventing other more affordable types of housing to be constructed in Wellington. We know that there's no silver bullet. We know that this is a long-term commitment to housing to address this need. And the housing needs and affordability assessment in this final report identifies what and how many and how to go about tackling some of those challenges. We obviously started this project with a lot of community engagement. We conducted online resident surveys and collected feedback that way. We did in-person events. We did visual preference surveys with different housing product types, asking our residents which of these types would you consider purchasing or renting. We did information on our town website, social media, and of course, we did our meetings here with the Planning Commission and Board of Trustees presentations. We also solicited directly a lot of stakeholder engagement. We've reached out to builders, developers, community housing partners, Housing Catalyst, Wellington Housing Authority, Habitat for Humanity, as well as some of our service providers that are not directly housing related, but work with low-income families like Boys and Girls Club and other agencies, Matthews House in Fort Collins. They have a different perspective on the types of needs that those residents have and how housing interacts with their stability. So we had a lot of input for this report, as well as just the data analytical research that was conducted to prepare the findings and recommendations. A couple of the key findings that we want to highlight from this final report. Almost 90% of the residential properties in Wellington are single-family detached homes. That's the most expensive form of housing that we can require to be built. And that was why one of the reasons we recommended changing some of the regulatory framework around our housing by changing lot sizes and allowing different products to be built in different zone districts. Roughly 9% of the housing stock is townhomes or condominiums. And that leaves just 1% that's duplexes, triplexes, manufactured homes and apartments, less than 1% of our overall housing stock. That lack of diversity of housing types puts a lot of pressure on the available units, which causes prices to go up. In addition to that, approximately in 2022, approximately only 1% of the town's residences were unoccupied. It's a vacancy rate of 1%. That means that units are in high demand for what we have, which causes prices to go up. Typically, 5% to 7% is considered a healthy vacancy rate for a community, and we're far below that. So we know that's putting additional pressure on the available housing. Average rent was 45% higher in Wellington than in Larimer County as a whole. Again, speaking to that, this is impactful to our community. Many of our residents who are college age, moving back to be with parents, young professionals looking to move to the community, looking for a place to rent while they're looking at housing options, are paying a higher demand for their rent, and their units are not available. We also found that in 2022, 41% of renter households and 24% of homeowners were considered cost burdened. Wellington residents, that means 30% or more of their household income is spent on housing costs. In addition to that, 35% of renters were severely cost burdened, meaning 50% or more of their household income is spent on rent. So those are really alarming numbers. And the only way we're going to get to that is by changing the way we build housing in this community. This report identifies that there's a gap in rental units below 50% AMI, which speaks to the severely cost burdened statistic I just spoke about a minute ago. And we also identify that not only is there a gap for rental housing, there's a gap for all housing. So there's just a supply challenge for housing in Wellington right now. Just mathematically looking at what's the expected demand in the Front Range in Wellington. Mathematically, we're expecting that approximately 800 new residential units will be needed by 2030 to meet that demand, and 1,300 new units need to be available by 2035 just to keep pace with expected demand pressure. So we know that there's some challenges in front of us. Can I say there's no silver bullet? It's going to take a series of incremental changes to start to close these gaps. The housing needs and affordability assessment report identifies some strategies to help start to tackle these. Those range from code amendments, which we've started to tackle. There's probably more work to do on that. That's an evolving process that we'll continue to look at with the community. We also identified that there are strategies involving additional studies and the need to identify existing housing opportunities. How do we help keep available units affordable? How do we help preserve our naturally occurring affordable housing stock? And we identified that there's a lot of programs and resources out there that need to be built upon. There's funding sources through HUD, through housing urban development, community development block grants. There's funding available through DOLA, Proposition 123, which was approved by Colorado voters to help address housing affordability goals. There are funding opportunities out there that will need to be taken a look at. We're not recommending those right now. Those are budgetary considerations that the Board of Trustees will have to look at, but we know that there are some opportunities out there and ways to utilize available funds to help address housing needs in Wellington. So we do expect that there will be more work to do on these topics. We also have a number of legislative changes that the Colorado State Legislature passed in 2024, and there's more on the horizon in 25 and 26. Those establish some pretty clear requirements that all communities in Colorado have to meet regarding housing. So we will be addressing those statutorily required changes as well. There's just a lot to do on housing, and this is the tip of the iceberg. But it's really impactful, and I'm really happy and proud that we have this first step for Wellington to really help understand and quantify the gaps and the needs that enables us to take that next step forward. So as I mentioned in your packet tonight is the final report. This is the culmination of 8 to 9 months of data research and analytics on what those numbers mean, resident engagement, stakeholder engagement, and public hearings on code amendments. So we're really proud of what we've got. And this final report just kind of pulls all that information together in one final document. So we're presenting this to the Planning Commission to kind of help close the book. This step is done, and we'll be looking at those next steps later on. We're presenting the same report to the Board of Trustees tomorrow night, along with a public hearing on the code amendments for starting to take down that first short-term goal for addressing the regulatory needs for housing. So with that, I will stand for any questions regarding the final report on the housing needs and affordability assessment.
How do the DOLA, those type of funds, how do those help? I mean, you get money, but where does it go?
So there's a couple of different, great question. There's a couple of different avenues there and a couple of different funding sources. Some of we're all familiar with the term unfunded mandates. Colorado legislature did a pretty nice job of making it very clear what needs to be done and what communities have to do, but they were also thoughtful and provided a funding source for some of those, or to help with some of those. So DOLA, Department of Local Affairs, has a number of grant opportunities out there. That was partially what funded this study. We obtained a planning grant to take this on. There's also money available for technical assistance where DOLA staff will help communities directly achieve the goals of these state mandates. There's funding available for planning capacity grants. If you need help in your organizations to get these objectives done, they can help fund resources for studies or for staffing to get those things done. Proposition 123 has a variety of different mechanisms that can range from planning grants and studies to pre-construction dollars to construction dollars for qualifying projects. So there are a variety of opportunities out there through DOLA funds and Prop 123.
I think we're good.
Sounds like
All
a
right.
quandary.
Eye-opening. This whole last 3 months has been a little shocking, huh?
It has been an eye-opener for sure. Well, I can stand for any further questions if there are any. Otherwise, we did include in the report the suggestion that a motion by the Planning Commission would just acknowledge that this is the final document and it has been completed. So that's the only action that we had recommended, is just to acknowledge completion.
Either of you would like to move to accept the final report of the Wellington Housing Needs and Affordability Assessment?
You looking for a motion now?
Unless you have any further questions or
I
discussion.
don't think so.
I move we accept and send this to the board. Wellington Housing Needs and Affordable Assessment Final Report.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Chalet,
Yes.
Commissioner Stringer,
Yes.
Commissioner McCaffrey,
Yes.
Chair Sarter.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, Mr. Byrd. Nice work.
Good job.
Yep. That was it for new business on the agenda. So if there's nothing else, any other communications from staff?
Chairman, this is, appreciative of the meeting tonight. I know it's brief. I would like to kind of advise the Planning Commission that the May meeting for May 5th, we are anticipating a public hearing for a subdivision plat. So attendance will be important. It will be a little bit longer staff report with that information in there. So if you wanted to brush up on your subdivision regulations, that's what's coming up next for a public hearing.
Will there be anything on the land use code amendments or anything pertaining to the housing needs assessment through the land use code that we're going to try to start changing and chipping away at here?
Not anticipating anything for May. kind of that first round of recommendations we presented for public hearing at the last meeting, and the board's going to look at that tomorrow night. So we're not anticipating anything for May right now. If that changes, we'll have to advertise and we'll have to look at the timelines.
Okay.
But staff is not currently pursuing additional code changes at this point. We need to kind of make it past the first round and see what changes occur from that before we move on.
Excellent. I'm excited. Preliminary plats are fun. I like those.
Yeah.
That'll be a first.
Yeah, no, they're fun. There's a lot to them. They're fun. Okay, any other communications?
That's all I have.
Staff
Thank you.
is satisfied. Anything else? All right. Adjourned.
Right.